Hey friends, so today I just kind of wanted to hang out and relax and just kind of talk about some messages and questions that I get quite a bit. So I figured I would just kind of put all of my thoughts, all of my brain thoughts into one video, and it would be very exciting. I didn't really want to do like a big tutorial video today. I'm getting my house ready for Anime St. Louis next week because I am having some friends stay with us for the convention, and yes, I will be at Anime St. Louis on May 3rd through the 5th, and then Anime Central, which is, I don't know, like 2 weeks after that. And then my plans are to go to Colorado in June and possibly attend a Ren Fair there, so I'm really excited about that. What I really wanted to talk about was like little tips and tricks, stuff that kind of help me when I'm making my costumes. The first thing that I wanted to talk about was my notebook, which was actually ever so wonderfully gifted to me by a wonderful patron, and it is really cute. I have some Patreon stuff, and I have some costume design which I am doing for Ren Fairs this year. It's a little dragon. I find writing down every single detail about an armor piece or a costume really helps me break down how exactly I'm going to make it and what fabric I need for it, or how much foam I may need for it, and how like the layers will go. When you're building armor and stuff, like it's all about the layers. You need to figure out what needs to go on first and then what's going to get piled on top of that for like detailing. This also helps you create a budget. So if you have a tight budget, you can break everything down, measure out how much stuff you need, and then you have yourself a nice little budget. You can also draw everything out, further break it down, and figure out how exactly you're going to do the strapping or whatever. Because sometimes in some games the pauldrons are just kind of floating there and it doesn't really make any sense because they're just floating. How are they attached to the person? No one actually knows. They're just kind of floating there. It's magic or something. I don't really know what's happening. And then also, I always recommend getting as many photos as possible that you can use for reference, whether that be looking it up on Google or doing what I did. I started up Skyrim again, and I got sucked in for about 200 more hours. And then I took as many shots as possible, like up close detailed shots of the Daedric armor, to try and get every single little piece, because I am a butt about details. I love details. I love tiny little details. Like the more details you can put on something, the more it shows. Like, holy fuck, like look at all this stuff I can look at. There's so much stuff. If you're going to be entering a contest, if you have the reference photos on your phone and you have photos of you building it, the judges actually really like that. So I also want to go over what you really need for foam armor and like building foam armor. There's actually not much that you need. You just need some foam. You use different thicknesses. If you're doing like a body piece, I recommend like 6mm foam. At least that's what I generally use. And then for like a weapon, like my Daedric greatsword was actually made out of two 10mm pieces that were glued together and then sanded to make a blade. You need a blade and you need a sharpener, because every time you cut into the foam, your blade dulls. You'll need a heat gun. A rotary tool is also very handy to have. Again, you don't really need it, but if you want nice and soft, smooth edges, then I recommend having a rotary tool, which you can get some at Harbor Freight. My dad gave me mine, and it's Dremel brand, which is really good. I recommend a plug-in as opposed to a battery operated one, because if you use a battery operated one, it's gonna probably die within like 10 minutes and you gotta wait for it to charge, and it's just not fun. I'm gonna get like so attacked for this, but I use hot glue.
Hot glue.
You don't need barge. It stinks. It's gross. It takes forever to dry. I hate it. This whole thing, all of my armor that you see here, is built with hot glue. Gorilla Glue has a hot glue now, and I have had experiences with this Gorilla Glue where my foam rips before the hot glue comes apart. Another thing that's very useful to have when making armor is Quick Seal. Quick Seal is a sealer, and it seals gaps and seams and stuff. So when you are trying to make a booby cup and you have the little cut seam and you gotta like put it together and you're like, damn, there's a heckin' seam here, all you do is you take some Quick Seal and you put it over the seam, and then you take your, what is this? You take your finger and you dip that in a little bit of water, and then you have a smooth seam. You may have to do that a few times and then sand it afterwards, and then you have like a really smooth seam. I didn't know about the water trick when I made this, so I do actually have a seam on the booby cups, and it's not pretty, but whatever. I don't care that much. It's fine. For priming your foam, I personally love Plasti Dip. Plasti Dip. It's so good. The smoothness that you get, and like when you put the paint over it, it's just like, you can also use wood glue mixed with water, and that's what I used again on my axe. My axe is all wood glue and water. I just prefer the ease of Plasti Dip, and Plasti Dip is very flexible, and Plasti Dip does not crack. I've never had any issues with Plasti Dip cracking. Lastly, you just need some paint. You just gotta paint it if you want to. You don't have to paint it, but if you want to paint your foam, you just need some paint. And you can use Michael's like acrylic paints, those ones that you can get for like $1 or something. If you're like me and you hate painting and it's just the bane of your existence, I would get an airbrush. My airbrush is a, can never remember what it is. It's a Pash VL series, and it is a siphon fed airbrush, meaning that the cup is on the bottom, and then when you press the trigger, it like, the air goes through and then it sucks up the paint, and then it all goes and then you have paint. But it's really useful if you're not good at wet blending, which I'm horrible at wet blending. I hate wet blending so much. It makes me so mad. I hate it. And it's also a dual action airbrush, meaning you can press down on the trigger and that just lets out air, but the more you hold back the trigger, more paint comes out. So with that, you have better control over your paint. I recommend the siphon feds over the gravity fed airbrushes if you're doing larger projects. You don't need a bunch of fancy equipment. It just, fancy equipment makes the job a lot easier. Oh, and then I almost forgot sandpaper. Sandpaper is pretty important too when you're making foam armor. What's that? You want to put LEDs and stuff? Good, because LEDs are very easy to put in things. Ryuko's wings and my axe right here both have LED strips from Amazon. So they are just strips and they come with a little battery pack, and you just throw them in there and you just gotta find a place to put the battery pack, and that's really it. Like LEDs are very easy to put in things. This thing was a little more complicated. This was the first project that I wired the LEDs and programmed them myself with the help of my boyfriend, because he's amazing and sweet. It was so much fun, and I'm so excited to see what I can do in the future with like hand wiring LEDs. And you don't need to do all that. You can just get the strips from Amazon and they work just as well. In fact, this whole room is lit with a strip from Amazon, and it's really great. It sets the mood. It's like crafting lighting. If you are interested in wiring your own LEDs, there are tons of tutorials out there. Once I get better at it, I will kind of go over how I do it. Everything that we got was from Adafruit. These are the Flora NeoPixels, and then we have it on an Arduino Uno board with a 500C power boost, I think is what it is. And then we have it hooked up to a lithium battery, and that's it. And I think the last thing that I wanted to touch on was, if you are like newer to cosplay and you don't want to spend all the money to get fabric and supplies and stuff, check out your local thrift store, because there you will find magical little oddities that will actually make cosplay life a lot easier. For example, I made an entire like elf costume, and the whole thing was from a thrift store. The corset was a jacket, the shirt was just thrifted, and the skirt was a sheet, I think, that my friend helped me turn into like a cool puffy little skirt thing. So she kind of had like a steampunk flair to her. She also had some leather armor, which was also just a leather jacket that I found. I spent like $15 total or something like that. It was really cheap. You can also paint fabric, so if you find a pair of shorts that's similar to what you want but not exactly, you can paint whatever details you need onto it, like stripes or whatever, and then you'll have a cool pair of shorts, and you get it fairly cheap. And sometimes it's definitely a lot cheaper than just buying fabric from Joann, but definitely check out like their bed sheets. My local thrift stores have fabric areas that you can look through and see if there's any cool fabric there. Obviously pre-wash the fabric. I wash mine like twice before using it. So yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about today. It was kind of an unorganized scramble of thoughts. I have lots of like cleaning and preparing to do before. Oh my god, there's foam scraps on my ceiling. Oh. So when I'm sanding my foam and there's hot glue, it like flies places, and there's some on my ceiling. I hope this video was somewhat helpful, and if not, at least a little bit entertaining. Well, thank you guys so much for watching and for hanging out, and I will see you guys next week. Go do awesome creative things, and thank you so much to my patrons: Adam Hunt, Aliar, Anime Crush, Anon, Blue Panda, Calvin Lewis, David Rosenbaum, Eric, Jennifer Croy, Jim W., Kalika Kaiser, Logan Don Carlos, Melvis Meriden, Kitten, Michael, Nathan M., Neem Crane, Nanaman, Robert Gallardo, Rusty Shackelford, Sakura, Veldemir, and Yandere Dream Girl. Thank you guys. Hearts, 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 hearts. Bye.